Tandem Nomads, episode 57. Hello, Nomad Nation. Welcome to Tandem Nomads, the weekly podcast show for expat partners. You will find here great inspiration and tips to build your portable career and thrive in your global nomadic life. I am your host, Amel Deregi. Welcome back to the best of series of Tandem Nomads first season. In these next 4 episodes, you will be able to listen to some of the top insights that were shared on Tandem Nomads to build a strong identity, plan a healthy financial, legal, and administrative situation, develop a career on the move, and build a successful portable business. So 4 major topics that can be really crucial for expat partners to make the best of their journey abroad. And after these 4 episodes, we will kick off the second season of Tandem Nomads. So this week is Identity and Reinvention Week. This is probably the centerpiece of what is often at the origin of expat partners' challenges when moving from a country to another. In the episode 51, if you remember, we talked a lot about the general challenges of defining home and our identity when living on the move and adapting to so many different cultures. But in the particular case of expat spouses, identity has a lot to do also with finding on top of that, the balance between being a parent, particularly a mom, dedicating time for the family, while trying to pursue our own dreams, aspirations, career, and building a strong self-confidence. So this is actually a challenge that has been highlighted by women for decades, even when not being a nomad. But moving from a country to another does not make it any easier. So in this episode, I have chosen some extracts that explain really well where this challenge comes from, but also explain some great insights and important advice to turn this challenge into great opportunities. We are going to start with Evelyn Simpson, an ex-banker, expat partner, and co-founder of the coaching company Thriving Abroad. She has here some really important messages to share with us.
I was very consumed in my career and then I stopped. And it made me understand how much my identity was caught up in my career. And that really defined who I was, and I guess it defined my self-worth at the time as well. So giving that up was difficult. And then you throw on a layer of cultural change and the exhaustion of being a new mother. It was not the easiest of times.
I can imagine.
It passed in a blur, I think, of tiredness mostly. There's no, oh my God, what have you been doing all day? Which I know is often a question that expat partners get frustrated with because they know they've been working really hard all day, even though they don't have an income. And I think it's trying to be as intentional about your experience as you can be. So trying to understand what it is that you want to get out of the experience, what it's going to do for your life, your career, your kids, whatever. But really thinking about that ahead of time and doing your research so that you understand what you're getting into. And, in terms of fulfillment, and I think it's particularly true for expat partners, don't allow your own needs to be buried in the process. Speak up for yourself, because if you don't take your own needs seriously to have a conversation about them, it's really difficult for other people, your partner, your partner's company, to take your needs seriously as well. I would say in terms of all of that is, don't just think about this move. If you're thinking about moving abroad for 3 years, don't just think about that move. Think and talk about what comes next. Because for a lot of people, one move leads to another move. And, while you intend to, particularly if you're an expat partner, if you intend to, say, take some time out of the workplace, at the end of 3 years or 5 years, if you haven't talked about it, then you're in a position where you don't have a source of income, you don't have a career. So the next move becomes almost a self-fulfilling thing, because it's kind of like, well, of course your career has to take precedence because it's the only one in our family. Yeah. So, I think it's really important, both for your income and your fulfillment and your long-term financial well-being.
To find out more about Evelyn and her great insights in the full version of this episode, go to tandemnomads.com/23, 2 and 3. So for those who have been following me closely since the launch of Tandem Nomads, you must know that I have never been a big fan of the term trailing spouse, and this is why I call this show Tandem Nomads, and I've expressly designate expat spouses as expat partners. I actually have a whole episode about this term, but here is an extract with Kristen Louise Duncombe that probably explains why, in certain cases, being an expat spouse really does feel like trailing, and actually what can we do to avoid that. So Kristen is a psychotherapist. She is also an expat partner and the author of Trailing, a memoir, and 5 Flights, Sex, Love, and Family.
The reason I entitled the book Trailing, for me, it was important to use that word specifically because when I agreed to follow my husband to East Africa, I think what really happened to me is that I found myself in the role of someone trailing. So I turned in my own agenda. No one asked me to do it. I went in fully compliant. And I followed my new husband. I was young and impulsive, and off we went. I discovered that nothing was like what I thought it was going to be. Part of my frustration is that I was there without any resources. And I was also extremely young. I went off very gung-ho thinking that I knew exactly how to assimilate. But one of the things I learned on the ground was that you can't just show up just because you're a clinical social worker and just because you have a background in public health and say, okay, here I am, and now I'm going to do some good work. It's just, it doesn't work like that. You've got to be plugged in with an infrastructure that allows you to use whatever skills you might be bringing to the situation. And I wasn't plugged in, and I agreed to that knee jerk. It didn't even occur to me to ask myself the question of how do you, as a young adult woman, want to craft your life? This huge and very, 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 very hard to get my head around for a while revelation that if you sit around waiting for someone to give you permission to be who you are or who you say you are, you might be waiting your whole darn life. Until I realized that the obstacle I was facing was that I was waiting for someone to give me a job versus creating my own job. Mm-hmm. And that for me is probably the biggest mental leap I have ever taken in my life.
Kristen takes us further through the really tough journey she has experienced and talks about a topic that's actually quite taboo in our communities of expats. What happens if, as an expat partner, the relationship does not go well with the spouse? And in worst cases, when the spouse is cheating and we end up being dependent and with no resources, what do we do? So Kristen Duncombe takes us through her story dealing with this and how she managed, despite all of those crazy events, to build a strong identity for herself and find her source of happiness and accomplishment. So to know all about it, check out this 2-part interview on tandemnomads.com/43 and tandemnomads.com/44. Here is now an extract with Rashmi Agarwala Zimborg. She's an ex-business consultant, an expat partner, a Ayurvedic fan, and a coach.
Well, since I met him, my goals started to shift. I had to get flexible. And, it's hard. It's hard to be a trailing spouse. And while it is very rewarding, it's very hard to say, I won't do what really makes me tick, because my husband needs to do what makes him tick. We forget that we have to take care of ourselves first. There are very few people that can stay conscious while you're raising children and getting married and moving from country to country, that all of us have not forgotten at some point to take care of ourselves or to put ourselves up first. And, forgetting yourself is a bad idea, because everything suffers from there. It's really like a domino effect. And the moment you say, all right, no, I have to take care of myself, then the shifts happen by themselves. Also in a domino way, the more you take care of yourself, the more things fall into place all around you. I think what's important that I would like to share is it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun going from one place to another, and it's exciting. It's exciting to discover new worlds. It's exciting for me, the most exciting part is to reinvent yourself every 4 years, or have a chance, or at least it's a privilege to say, all right, I didn't like that about my life. Here we go. I have a chance to fix that and change it and describe myself differently. And I think that is amazing.
Rashmi takes us even further through this incredible identity reinvention journey she's been through, and she also shares some great insights on tandemnomads.com/31. Here is now Lisa Webb, the blogger of Canadian Expat Mom and the author of the book series The Kids Who Travel the World. She also put together the anthology Once Upon an Expat, a book of fascinating stories from 39 expat women across the world.
Sometimes you're stronger than you think you are. I remember getting to Paris and thinking, I don't know if I can do this. I might have to go back home. Like, this is not what I had in mind. But once you do it, and once you get really proud of yourself, and you think, okay, well, if I can do that, I can do this. Or I think what I had to do was find something that I was really passionate about. To be able to find my way, I needed to find out what I loved. Well, obviously, I loved my kids. I loved writing. And our family is very passionate about traveling. It's something that my husband and I did before we even knew each other. So then it was normal for us to continue on doing that with our children. And so the more I would write, the more I would write about being a mom. I would write about traveling with my kids. And it kind of came together on its own. For me, I realize it's not going to work out that way for everyone. But I think that as someone who's trying to find something new, it's almost like you have to recreate your life when you're an expat. You leave the life you had, you leave your job, you leave your language, and you really need to find what works for you. So maybe for me that was writing, so I just passionately focused on that. And maybe for someone else, it's cooking, which is what I did when we started moving to France. And some people, maybe they love going to the gym and they use that time to turn inwards and just get really fit. And you need to kind of think of it as it's a time in your life when you can do something you might not have otherwise had the opportunity to do, because you have this time and you have this chance to start fresh. So it's a really good opportunity to just think, well, what makes me happy? But like I said, it didn't come easy. It took some time. It took a few years. I didn't know if it was going to go. I never would have imagined that I would have been writing books. I just started out wanting to tell some funny stories to anyone back home, like maybe my mom was the only person who was reading them. But I think maybe now a few more people than my mom read them. So I'm happy about that. And you know what? For the first probably 3 years, I was really busy being a new mom. Well, first I was trying to find my way in a new country. I wasn't a mom yet. And then being a new mom took up a few years of my life because my kids were so close together. So if someone asked me, I probably wouldn't even have mentioned my blog. But now that my kids are a little bit older, and I've kind of used that as a branch to start my kids' book series, and the books are about traveling, and every book the kids go to a new country, and it's all countries that my kids have been to, and the books are actually based on my 2 daughters. So that's kind of part of who I am now. It's like a passion project that has turned into actual work. But it's taken me a while to get to a place where I would say that that's my job, or that's what I do during the day.
Lisa tells us more about her journey to find her identity and balance between being a mom and building a professional career on tandemnomads.com/33. After we got to know each other through this interview, Lisa gave me the opportunity and really extreme honor of writing a chapter of the book Once Upon an Expat. So in this chapter that I called Lost and Found Between Homeless and Homeful, I share all about my journey defining home. This book is a collection of inspiring stories from expats who share their adventures and very moving stories across the globe. So if you're looking for a fun book to read, relax, and relate to your own stories, you can get it with a simple click on the web page of this episode, tandemnomads.com/57, 5 and 7. But also know something very important is that if you purchase this book, you will participate to a really, really important cause, as all the proceeds will be donated to Books Abroad, which is an NGO that supports literacy in the developing world. So I really hope that you will help us support this cause and go to tandemnomads.com/57 to purchase it. In the next episode, we will discuss all the aspects that you should really think of planning ahead of time for you and your family when you decide to move abroad. So see you in the next episode, and stay tuned to turn your challenges into great opportunities.